And once again, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is putting reckless policy ahead of the needs and concerns of everyday Canadians. I made note that he would do this on his way out the door. Ultimately, this cap will lead Alberta and our country into economic and societal decline. We'll also continue to defend the livelihoods of the estimated 150,000 workers nationwide who will lose their jobs as a result of this cap.
Did you see what just happened? Danielle Smith, Alberta's Premier, faced off against Justin Trudeau on live TV. It wasn't just an interview, it was a takedown. Smith didn't pull any punches. She hit Trudeau with hard facts about Canada's border crisis, the deadly opioid epidemic, and the struggling economy. In 2022, a staggering 39,071 migrants crossed into Canada illegally through Roxham Road. This unofficial entry point between New York and Quebec became a symbol of Canada's border crisis. But while these numbers shocked many Canadians, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau maintained a rosy picture of the situation. Trudeau has long touted Canada's welcoming attitude towards immigrants and refugees. He's painted a picture of a nation with open arms and secure borders. But Danielle Smith wasn't buying it. In their heated exchange, she exposed the stark reality behind Trudeau's flowery rhetoric. Smith pointed out how this influx has overwhelmed Canadian communities.
Imposing an oil and gas emissions cap will only make Canadians poorer. Strong climate action requires a strong economy. We will continue to defend our province and our constitutional rights. We will also continue to defend the livelihoods of the estimated 150,000 workers. We will continue to defend the families all across this country who will be left with $419 per month less to be able to pay for groceries and mortgage payments and utilities.
Take Montreal, for instance. The city's shelters are bursting at the seams, with newcomers sleeping on floors and in corridors. Local resources are stretched thin, and the housing crisis has intensified. In Toronto, nearly 40% of shelter occupants are refugee claimants. This puts immense pressure on a system already struggling to house the city's homeless population. The strain on social services is equally alarming. Healthcare systems in major cities are buckling under the pressure. Wait times for essential services have skyrocketed, affecting both newcomers and longtime residents. Schools are scrambling to accommodate children who need language support and specialized care. But it's not just a Canadian problem. Smith hinted at the US perspective, suggesting that Canada's lax border policies might be encouraging illegal migration through America. This raised eyebrows about the potential diplomatic tensions brewing beneath the surface. So what shocking facts did Smith reveal about Trudeau's border policies? She exposed that despite Trudeau's claims of a well-managed system, there's no real plan to handle the influx. The government has been playing catch-up, relying on band-aid solutions like housing migrants in college dorms and hotels. Smith argued that this approach is unsustainable and unfair to both Canadians and genuine refugees waiting in camps overseas.
We will continue to defend Albertans and Canadians who rely on revenues from oil and gas to pay for the public services that they desperately need, including healthcare, education, law, justice services. We spend $2.2 billion on roads and bridges. It would wipe out our entire roads and bridges budget. We spend $3.2 billion supporting assured income for the severely handicapped. It would wipe out that entire program. Those losses put public services at risk, not only here, but also at the federal level and through the transfers to other provinces.
Perhaps most damning was Smith's revelation about the lack of proper vetting. She suggested that Trudeau's government has been so focused on appearing welcoming that they've overlooked crucial security measures. This lax approach doesn't just pose potential safety risks. It's also a slap in the face to those following proper immigration channels. Record numbers. It's a phrase that should inspire pride, but in Alberta it's become a grim marker of tragedy. As Smith peeled back the layers of Trudeau's neglect, she revealed a crisis so severe that it's redefining Canada's relationship with its closest ally. The question is, can anything be done to stem the tide of destruction? Consider the Johnson family from Edmonton. Their son, a promising athlete, became another statistic in Alberta's opioid epidemic after a sports injury led to addiction. This heart-wrenching story is far from unique. Alberta is experiencing record numbers of deaths due to the opioid crisis. with fentanyl claiming lives at an alarming rate. It's not just a local issue, but a national tragedy that's tearing families apart across Canada. The scale of the fentanyl problem in Canada, particularly in Alberta, is staggering. Yet, as Smith pointed out, Trudeau's government seems paralyzed. Their inaction has allowed the crisis to escalate, with dangerous substances flowing into Canada from abroad. It's a stark contrast to Trudeau's carefully crafted image of compassionate leadership. Smith didn't mince words in her critique. She argued that the lack of effective measures from Ottawa has essentially given drug traffickers a free pass. The consequences? Communities ravaged, families destroyed, and a healthcare system pushed to its limits. But it doesn't stop at the Canadian border. The same dangerous substances entering Canada are fueling drug problems in American communities, adding another layer of complexity to Canada-US relations. As tension built during the interview, viewers were left wondering what solutions could possibly address such a massive crisis. Smith's proposals were bold and decisive.
1 million barrels a day of lost production at an average rate would cost us in royalties anywhere from $3 billion to $7 billion per year. Ultimately, this cap will lead Alberta and our country into economic and societal decline. And once again, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is putting reckless policy ahead of the needs and concerns of everyday Canadians. The losses to GDP mean $28 billion will disappear from the Alberta economy, and nationally, $97 billion.
She emphasized the need for real solutions rather than empty rhetoric, pushing for more effective federal measures to address the flow of illegal drugs across the border. Her plan involves holding Ottawa accountable for its policies and demanding immediate action. Imagine a world where Canada's oil-rich province becomes an economic ghost town overnight. It sounds like the plot of a dystopian novel, but according to Danielle Smith, it's the future Trudeau's policies are steering us towards. Is this the price of progress or a colossal miscalculation? Alberta's energy sector isn't just important, it's the backbone of the province's economy and a crucial player in North American energy security. The province exports billions in oil and gas to the United States, ensuring a stable energy supply for our southern neighbors. But Trudeau's ambitious emissions cap threatens to pull the rug out from under this economic powerhouse. The federal government's proposed cap is so extreme that experts warn it could effectively shut down production in Alberta. We're not talking about a gradual transition here. This is a potential economic collapse that could leave thousands jobless and devastate communities across the province. Smith didn't mince words when addressing this conflict between federal goals and Alberta's economic reality. She pointed out the glaring contradiction in Trudeau's approach. You can't promise energy security abroad while sabotaging it domestically.
I made note that he would do this on his way out the door. It's like a bad renter who's burning the furniture on their way out. He needs to call an election now to seek a mandate to do this not only to our province but to the country. Justin Trudeau continues to choose to outsource that duty to provide safe, affordable, reliable, and responsibly produced oil and gas to dictators and less clean producers around the world. Once again, Ottawa is putting up roadblocks instead of providing solutions to global energy security. And make no mistake, Alberta and Canada have the ability to provide security to the world.
It's a powerful statement that cuts to the heart of the issue. How can Canada claim to support its allies' energy needs while actively undermining its own production capabilities? The potential consequences of Trudeau's policies are far-reaching. Beyond the immediate impact on Alberta's economy, there are serious implications for Canada's international commitments and relationships. The United States relies heavily on Canadian energy exports. If those supplies were suddenly cut off or drastically reduced, it could spark a diplomatic crisis and potentially reshape North American energy dynamics. In contrast to Trudeau's approach, Smith is advocating for a more pragmatic path forward. Her vision for Canadian energy policy focuses on preserving jobs, maintaining strong trade relationships, and balancing environmental concerns with economic realities. She's pushing back against Ottawa's aggressive emissions cap through legislative action, emphasizing the need to prioritize Alberta's interests in national energy policy. While Canada-US relations are at a crossroads, the path forward looks treacherous. Border security issues, defense spending shortfalls, and an influx of cheap imports pushed American patience to its limits. But there's more to this story than meets the eye. What crucial piece of the puzzle is Trudeau overlooking, and how might it devastate Alberta's economy? The current tensions in Canada-US trade relations are like a powder keg waiting to explode. US officials have expressed growing frustration with Canada over a range of issues, from border management to defense spending. This isn't just diplomatic posturing. It's a serious threat to the economic well-being of both nations. Trudeau's policies have added fuel to this fire. His government's approach to border security, in particular, has raised eyebrows south of the border. The US is increasingly irritated by Canada's role as a staging area for illegal migrants and the flow of fentanyl across the border. These aren't just Canadian problems anymore. They're directly impacting American communities and straining the relationship between the two countries. Danielle Smith didn't shy away from addressing these issues head-on. She warned that potential US tariffs on Canadian goods could have devastating effects on Alberta's economy. "I think every one of us realizes how devastating it would be," Smith stated, highlighting the gravity of the situation. "It's not just idle speculation. Historical precedent shows that US tariffs on Canadian goods have led to significant economic repercussions in the past. The importance of US-Canada trade can't be overstated. The two countries share one of the world's largest trading relationships, with billions of dollars in goods and services crossing the border daily. Any disruption to this flow could have cascading effects throughout both economies, potentially leading to job losses and economic instability." So what's Smith's solution to avoid this looming trade crisis? Her approach emphasizes a collaborative governance model to address trade concerns. This stands in stark contrast to Trudeau's focus on optics rather than substantive outcomes. Smith is pushing for a more pragmatic approach, one that prioritizes addressing US concerns while protecting Canadian interests. Smith's strategy for improving Canada-US relations and protecting Alberta's economy involves several key elements. She's advocating for stricter border controls and increased cooperation on security issues. At the same time, she's pushing back against Ottawa's aggressive emissions cap, which she argues would decimate jobs and production in Alberta, further straining trade relations. As the dust settles on this explosive interview, the contrast between Danielle Smith and Justin Trudeau couldn't be clearer. Smith's fact-based approach exposed glaring failures in Trudeau's leadership. From the border crisis to the opioid epidemic, from energy policy to international trade, Trudeau's government has repeatedly fallen short. Smith's practical solutions stand in stark relief against Trudeau's perceived ineffectiveness. While the Prime Minister offers platitudes, Smith presents concrete plans to address Canada's pressing issues. One political analyst called her approach a much-needed reality check for Canadian leadership. Recent polls show growing disillusionment with Trudeau's performance. Canadians are frustrated by mismanagement of key issues and are increasingly viewing Smith as a viable alternative. Her rising profile raises a crucial question. Is Canada ready for a leadership style that prioritizes results over image? The answer may well shape the nation's future.